There's no single GBS center that doesn't have their version of ChatGPT. But the results are not as spectacular as one would think. But I remember when I was speaking with our AI partner last year, and his comment was that it's really what resources he finds the best in his team are doing the best are people from linguistic backgrounds. Yeah. So no longer engineers, but people who can actually convert it into the language that is understood and being very precise. What I believe works really well, if we have a combination of people who understand the business or the process, but also have the technology mindset. And if you combine them together, this is where you get the most benefit.
You called it the translators?
Because they translate from different languages, right? From IT language into the business language. Because very often those two groups are speaking completely different languages, have different communication styles, and the person in the middle helps to reconcile it.
P2P podcast. Real leaders, real lessons. Real talk on the future of purchase to pay for finance, procurement, and GBS leaders who care about what works, not what sounds good.
Today I'm joined by Ola Stelmach-Gryszka. Ola spent more than 16 years working global business services and finance transformation, and currently you are a partner with PwC here in Poland. You worked with organizations that are redesigning their operation models, building and reshaping GBS structures, and trying to make large transformation programs actually deliver. What makes Ola's perspective interesting is that you've seen these journeys from the inside out. So you build business cases, you've seen leadership teams align or don't, and where ambition meets reality. So today we're going to explore what really makes transformation work in practice. What separates organizations that build real capability for those that just change structures, and how leaders navigate the tension between speed, efficiency, and long-term impact. So, Ola, you spent more than 16 years in GBS and transformation. What keeps you interested in this space?
Okay, well, thanks. First of all, thanks very much for inviting me. And I have to say, I love my job, and there are a lot of things that are keeping me interesting. But if I were to nail down two things, the first one would be that it's a never-changing environment. So even a simple project like transition, the transitions that I used to do 15 years ago versus transitions now, they're completely different transitions. They require different tools because the context and the environment changed, but also no one client is the same. So even though certain failures or mistakes are repeatable or risks, there's always something new and something unexpected, so you can never get bored. And then the second thing, as cliche as it sounds, it's the people that you work with. So first of all, the people on the team, but also the clients, but also many inspiring people that you get to meet on your journeys as well. And I have to say, GBS industry is very open in general and very willing to share knowledge and experiences. People travel across the world, and I think that's what makes it really, really exciting.
Yeah, good. Yeah, you already mentioned that transformation 15 years ago, totally different than today. What were the biggest changes?
I think when I look at transformation, and coming from consulting, we always try to decompose things into some structures. So when I think of transformations, process, people, and technology, but I think the accents between process, people, and technology changed over time. So when I started, it was all about the process optimization, the lean techniques, and harmonization, all of those. Later on, I started deploying some projects which focus on people efficiency, because you can have a best process, but if you don't have the people who, first of all, are able to maybe spot the weaknesses or to improve it and don't have the drive, like even the best process won't work. So then the accents, in my opinion, change into people. Technology was always there, but my preference was always for people first, technology second. Having said that, it's now becoming to play far more bigger role, but it's not just technology, it's technology combined with data as well. So I think there's still a lot of unknowns, but I do see the accents shift towards technology, But again, the technology will just be a tool unless it's operated by people who know how to use their benefits in the most optimal way. So I think changing the accents, but people always at the background.
No, very good, very good. Yeah, you already mentioned technology, people, process. I think further on in the discussion we will touch those points definitely.
For sure.
Because it's also interesting to see if there is a circle, where we started in processes and moved to people. Now technology definitely is the last year's the buzzword. It's also interesting to see, should we go back to process again to make sure that technology is working. If you go back in time and think about the first belief when you entered into the consultancy business in your early career, about shared services, about the work you're gonna do, and which belief you had in the past, which you would say you unlearned today, or you had totally wrong misconception?
I'm not sure if it's a belief, but I think when I started, it was all about the cost. So shared services were all about the cost and purely understood as labor arbitrage. So I think this is where it started a few years ago. Now I think the accents change. So the labor arbitrage, even though it's still there, especially if you look at CE and maybe the rest of the Europe or Western world, but it's far less about the cost itself. It's more about the quality and value. So it's not what you had to unlearn, but more how it evolved and the accents shifted. So now GBS is a natural part of the organization, and it can deliver far more benefits than the cost itself through, for example, looking into data. We probably will get into the examples, but the value that can be generated from, for example, analyzing data and identifying additional rebates to be found, or maybe managing your bad debt more effectively, you can actually get some real cash flow benefits as well, which I think were maybe a little bit underestimated at the beginning of the journey.
Yeah, so interesting. So cost is still there,
still
but
a factor,
cost is not
yes.
the belief that it is a minus for the people.
If you actually look into some of our surveys, it still comes in the top 3, but it's no longer number 1. I think it's more towards the number 3 position than number 1. But the quality and value, this is where the accents are shifting.
Good. Yeah, that's a nice bridge also to the next one. Because according to the latest PwC GBS study, 57% of organizations say GBS is shaping strategic initiatives, and 77% are investing in centers of excellence. Yeah, on paper, that suggests that a clear move towards a higher value, which you already are indicating. From what you see in reality in organization, where is this actually really true, and in which parts it's more an ambition than really reality today?
I think there is definitely a shift into the centers of excellence and the more value-adding services. But I think sometimes organizations just call the COEs on paper without really empowering them to make decisions and, well, to drive recommendations as well. And where I believe the centers achieve the highest benefit is when they empower COEs to maybe act beyond what's in SLAs and the typical scope of services, but when they have the more end-to-end offering and pretty much the ability to make recommendations and decisions. So what it, for example, means for finance processes, we do see more and more organizations that have end-to-end finance services, including financial, statutory, and tax reporting. And I think through that, well, first of all, it's more attractive for SSC employees to be working in such a center of excellence because people see career progression, but then they can really provide valuable insights to the rest of the organizations. Another good example, I think, that GBS positioned themselves well in relation to COEs, I think like in pharma, because with pharma, there's far more regulation, and typically some of the processes weren't even operated previously in the sending organizations or in the headquarters. So everything that comes from pharmacovigilance, GBS is a natural place where it can sit because it already has a lot of data, a lot of well-processed thinking, and a lot of capabilities. So I think those center of excellence, if anything is new, ESG, I think, could be the next one. I think GBS is a perfect candidate where such things could be located and created from scratch.
Yeah, that's also ESG is the new word, which is also necessary. I think if we look at the environment around us and the role we have as businesses. So actually, also what you're saying is it's more a traditional setup of a lot of shared service centers where you had the transactional ones, you had the HR ones, you had the R&D centers. But the example you're naming now on the pharma is actually almost combining a bit of the R&D with the finance part, is it?
Yes, it is indeed, yes. And I think when you look especially into our part of the world, so in CE, I think transactional gets smaller and smaller for different reasons. Part of it is being automated, we're using different tools. Part of it actually shifts further east as well, but there's still a good potential to bring those additional services, and this is where this part of the world, I think there's a lot of capabilities and people want to grow in this area. So definitely a huge potential, and still not everyone is in their maturity and in what could be done in the center of excellence where they could be.
Yeah, and what would be then actually also your advice to the leaders of those centers which are not there yet or even didn't start? Because what we also see is that a lot of them don't know how to start, or the organization is not ready yet. What advice would you give them? And then maybe also, we heard that this morning as well at the event, is what would be your pitch internally for them to sell that?
I think it's a hard job because you effectively need to sell it. You need to promote yourself. We're not very good at promoting our successes as well. And it's a huge change management and stakeholder management to actually build the trust and to convince the people that it's worth doing it from our part of the world. But I think the best way is to actually show success, build trust through what you did maybe on simpler cases, but take initiative. So if you're already doing, GL accounting, like why not go further into more advanced reporting or maybe some FP&A planning and analysis. I think if you take the initiative, if you show examples, again, GBS industry is very open, so bring them to other companies that have already done it to convince you can actually do it. Then I think you have a good chances of convincing that you are ready. But a lot of stakeholder and change management needed.
What I see, or what we see in reality, is that there is already so much automated. Now we get AI coming into the play already for some years. How can AI actually, or what examples did you see where AI really pushed it into the next level of automation, that you really say it's not a replacement for what currently already was and it is doing something smarter? But did you already engage into some projects where you see that it is helping the efficiency, effectiveness a bit more?
I think there's a lot of buzz around AI and has been for a while, and everyone is doing something. And everyone, there's no single GBS center that doesn't have their version of ChatGPT or other tools. But the results are not as spectacular as one would think based on what AI is perceived to be able to do. So all the centers are experimenting, and rightly so. They should be doing it. We've seen a lot of small use cases. So, for example, maybe some agentic AI examples when you can analyze some of your data, where you can maybe get some insights out of the data as well, and some ideas how this can be solved. There are various chatbots, for example, on internal company processes. So I think the use cases are there. Have they brought the impact that everyone is anticipating? I have not seen an organization where it's really made a huge transformational change. In fact, if we actually look into a market, there are some surveys that many companies that maybe made too early decisions about either freezing headcount or reducing headcount, anticipating the AI changes, they didn't realize their benefits, and unfortunately, they had to go back and suffered badly on that journey.
Yeah, yeah. That's also one of your competitors produced a report last year where actually CFOs and CEOs only 11% still had confidence in AI really make a huge difference, and not that it's not used; it's used in a lot of
Exactly.
cases.
Yeah.
It helps, it accelerates. What we also see is that sometimes it's more a added value. So you can do stuff with it which you couldn't do in the same time before, but it's not really elevating the process or the service delivery you can do.
Absolutely.
So it's in. Do you also have examples? Because we've seen some where they try so hard on AI and they probably have unlimited budgets, so they keep trying to fix something with AI, which, in my opinion, you can't fix with AI. Do you see that happening as well?
I think we can read it in the press even, right? That there were some spectacular examples from some of the even technology companies where they were really hoping for the benefits from AI in customer service. And then as a result, a lot of the customer orders were blocked, and it created a lot of pain for the company. So there are unfortunately examples of failures from our industry as well. There were examples when reports were written largely by AI without fully disclosing it. So I think there are some failures on the way, but it's understandable. We all learn from those mistakes. But I think that only puts the pressure or the need to actually make sure that there is a proper governance and still some professional judgment used whenever we are working with AI.
Maybe also good is are there already some AI initiatives internally which worked out, which is helping that part, or do you also see it internally with your organization that it is more a value add-on rather than?
We do have a lot of initiatives, but we look at it as an add-on and maybe like as an efficiency tool to some extent, but more to free up capacity of the people to do other things and to focus on other things. So there are a lot of initiatives. We have a lot of upskilling programs and a lot of, everyone obviously uses AI tools, but there are also dedicated teams that are working on the accelerators. And I can give one example that is actually working really well. We actually had a person on our team who was always had this digital mindset. And he actually decided to move into our digital and automation team. And I've actually noticed that it actually brings a lot of benefits for our team because he understands what we need, but then is able to have right access to the digital teams and be able to produce the proof of concepts and the ideas really, really quickly. So what I believe works really well, if we have a combination of people who understand the business or the process, but also have the technology mindset, and if you combine them together, this is where you get the most benefits. So I have to say the amount of ideas that have started to flow into our team very recently, it's amazing. So really, really looking forward into the concrete benefits that it will bring to our team, both in terms of improving efficiency, but also delivering more quality. And there are different tools, something to do with how you capture the documentation, different dashboards, different process, agentic AI for our clients. So a lot of examples like that are actually flowing. So small changes, but I think it's the combination of them that will make an impact. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. And because also I think there you touched the point where AI is actually very useful when you have it in a combination with the right people. I already had a few discussions where people think AI will replace people. And the funny thing, what I marked last week to my CIO is that, could be true, but I think you need to worry the most because AI could actually replace easier programmers, IT people. And what we also see is that AI useful cases are mainly because there are people who know what to instruct, what to prompt, what is the problem and what needs to be solved, and also be able to actually check the results, whether they are good or not. So it might even be is that the IT people are not the right people to develop AI initiatives. Do you agree? And I think the example you gave was like this, is it?
It was a little bit like that. I think it changes over time as well, what skills are needed. But I remember when I was speaking with our AI partner last year, when I had some challenge, like I couldn't get it to work. And we had a conversation about how to build proper prompts. And his comment was that it's really what resources he finds the best in his team are doing the best are people from linguistic backgrounds.
Yeah.
So no longer engineers, but people who can actually convert it into the language that is understood and being very precise. So I think it's a completely different skill set that everyone thought would be the most needed in AI industry, right? And in general, I think where companies need to upskill, if it's a purely technological person, they probably need some soft skills upskilling. If it's a business person, maybe they need to have the awareness of technology and just to see what they need. And I think if you combine the two, this is where you can get the biggest impact.
Maybe also good to go a bit more into detail into how transformation work and what works and what not works. You've seen many transformations. Think of one transformation where you were involved, which really worked. What made the difference from that one compared to others?
I can think of one transformation that really worked, and I think the differentiating factor for that was, first of all, change management, which is very often underestimated. But what it actually meant in this case was really getting the inputs from all sides of the organization. So from the actual business users, then making sure you create the champions and then creating a positive vibe about it. And it was a perfect work, like how the team actually operated in making sure they address the business user needs and create momentum in this transformation. What I believe what worked really well on this transformation was also that very often when you have technology implementation projects, CFIN or any other ERP implementation, they're often driven by IT. But on this project, it was driven by finance, and IT was one of the stakeholders. And this is where I believe again, it's often underestimated, but that's what works really well, because at the end, you're creating a process and technology for the business users, so they need to provide a significant input. Otherwise, IT may have a different perspective of what a good process, or, well, they're driven by completely different KPIs, right? So I think it's important to make sure that you actually apply this business perspective, and that's what worked really well on this project.
Okay, interesting. So the combination of, first of all, change management, and I do agree that often people see it as a sort of a project and they forget the people part.
Yeah.
You need to have the buy-in. If you don't get the buy-in, then there's nothing to transform.
Or they see it as a change plan, but it's actually a lot of activities need to happen as a result of a change plan, right? So it's not a paper exercise. A lot of conversations, a lot of engagement, a lot of, community work. I think that's what makes it successful.
Yeah. So change management and inclusiveness, working together to have common goals. If you look at those projects, how is the role of the leadership different than in transformations where you missed a bit of this?
I think they need to be. What worked really well with this project was also the agility and speed at which the project operated, but also the ability to get a different viewpoint. So on this project, there was a very rigid governance in terms of the PMO and all of those. But on top of it, there was something which we called Dragon's Den. So wherever there was any dilemma that didn't fit into the normal project governance or any this key design decisions, there was always a discussion about it on a weekly basis. There was a Dragon's Den using the concept, and people will pretty much come and pitch for the solution, the best solution. Of course, they need to come equipped with facts and data and ideas. So it created a lot of pressure on the team on a weekly basis to come up with evidence and the right solution, but it actually helped to really make the tough decisions in a consultative way using a large forum, and to progress really, really, really quickly. So the agility, but also being able to find the consensus across the various viewpoints was key for this.
Interesting.
Initiative.
And the dragons were the leadership?
The leadership team,
Okay,
yes.
good. And they never changed it, different way around. And so it was more as a, it's not really a top-bottom model, but did they change it also bottom-up? Is that...
Well, on this was just for the big dilemma. So it was the leadership team. Sometimes they brought in some other external experts, but usually it was the same team. But we're actually using this concept on some of our other projects as well. We do it bottom up, for example, for the teams to pitch for some small ideas, right? So very often when we do run those efficiency projects, we use the concept of dragons then for the people to come up with ideas, and they pretty much need to present the business case as well. It's a good exercise for the team to also to think from the business perspective, but at the same time a good tool for the organization to evaluate potential new initiatives and projects.
Yeah, interesting. It's good. Yeah, but because I think that is also a misfit, where if you do bottom up and people pitch their idea and you give them the opportunity to also actually own the idea and to implement it, that doesn't work always as well, because there are a lot of people with great ideas, but not the greatest execution. And also the moment they get the responsibility, the accountability, they blank.
Yeah.
And so in that case also, one of the things I experienced also is that buy-in from the management in that case, and the support is also very needed.
Yes, true. But I think this is where, well, the idea is just the first step, right? Then you need to have the full machine behind it as well, and the support of the rest of the organization, whether they're process experts or technology experts. I think the idea is just the beginning, and then of course measuring, is it likely, and being challenged, will it actually bring us the benefits we said it will? Yeah.
Yeah. You already mentioned before in transformations, and you just said it. What worked is because there was actually working together. It was not an IT project. It was also in cooperation or driven by finance, the final users. I think in a lot of technology implementations, technology into transformation, that is also the biggest struggle for companies. The different language of IT and the people who work with it, either finance or HR. Can you share a bit of your experience here?
Yes. So on the project that I was mentioning, there were some real hard, technology experts like SAP technology experts. We were using the input from the finance teams, but there was also a business analyst role. And I think the business analyst role is actually very important, because this is the person who understands the technology, but also understands, say, chart of accounts questions, or how your product master should be structured. So I think they're able to speak the language of finance, having understanding of and being able to communicate with the finance community, while at the same time having awareness of technology without all the hardcore skills, how you actually do the coding and all the setup, but being able to merge the two roles. So once again, like when you have someone in the middle, and I think this is where again, this is one of the roles which is underestimated. There are not that many people in the market that can actually do it. But if you put someone in the middle who understands and can connect the two words, then you're more likely to succeed.
Yeah, interesting. In previous discussion, you had a very nice, say, function title for this. You called it the translators.
I use the translators, yes, because they translate from different languages, right? From IT language into their business language. And I think that's effectively the role, because very often those two groups are speaking completely different languages, have different communication styles, and the person in the middle helps to reconcile it.
Yeah. So I think that would also be maybe a tip to everybody who is still studying. Make sure and I think also the new generation will be a bit more tech savvy. But then again, if we come back to the AI discussion, we need to be aware that we need to give them the opportunity to learn what is the initial project or process
Yes.
to become the translator. Because if we look at the business, it's very difficult to find those roles, is it?
Yes, they're not very obvious roles, right? So, and it's hard even to know where to look for them. So I think, well, in PwC specifically, our finance transformation role team is doing exactly that. So being the connecting point, like not necessarily operating those processes, but understanding technology. They actually bring ideas about the technology as well, but are able to speak, for example, with SAP engineers as to how best to shape the process and how best to design it.
And then we go to people decisions. In transformations always bring that there needs to be a result. A result is not only, say, going into a new landscape, but often also with the goal is to be more efficient, effective. So what we often also see is that the people who worked into transformation are often also the ones who will find another job afterwards. Can you give good examples of leadership, how they dealt with that part?
It is actually a very good question. We are going to talk about it at the conference tomorrow, because if you look into the market, the number of what we call sensitive transformation increases. And where do those sensitive transformations come from? They come from technology implementations. So that's one big driver when the workforce can be affected. But then you also hear a lot in the market that there are a lot of shifts from maybe the CE region into further east. So these are always very sensitive. And there are multiple other examples, like sometimes the sensitive transformation is purely because there are so many things happening at the same time that the workload is unbearable for staff. So first of all, the thoughtful leadership should acknowledge that it's actually a very difficult time for the employees. And then once you acknowledge it, let's face it, and then have a concrete plan for it. And it could mean different things for different companies, depend on what type of transformation it is. But it, first of all, starts with communication, again. So be as transparent as you can about the impact, about the benefits, and what you're going to achieve with this initiative. And in either case, if people are affected, please make sure that you have a plan for them. So you either have a role for them in the future, or maybe you have some program for upskilling, reskilling, to make sure that they feel as secure as they could in this situation. And many companies underestimate it. Sometimes they're not able to share the information as well, because maybe that's too early. It's confidential information. They cannot disclose too much, and then they suffer a lot, right? And then they have a lot of the values around the people written on in their vision and mission for the companies, but there is a lack of consistency. So we believe there should be a very well thought through approach as to how you're going to deal with people whenever those big transformation projects happen.
Yeah, very nice.
And maybe one more thing. In today's market, we don't actually have, it's more employers market than employees market, which actually increases the uncertainty of employees, and that's why it's becoming even more important to actually have a good and optimistic message for them as well, and support where needed.
Yeah, because it's also dangerous, where we see with the new generations, they are less loyal, and when they sense there is smoke, they know that there is finally fire. So they might also leave before you complete the transformation, and then you're left with empty hands.
Yeah, and the worst that can happen, your best employees usually like you. Well, they're the most sought after in the market. So these are the people that you really don't want to lose. So you also need to have a plan for them as well, and make sure that you send them the right message, and that they understand what future is there for them.
Yeah, because there is. I know many people in the business who only do transformations. So they pop in, they pop out, etc. So for them, it's not a risk, but definitely We see still that there, for the larger corporations, there is still a tendency. A lot of employees stay long with the company, which is very good. But sometimes also maybe people might underestimate the experience and the knowledge they still contain. And so having a plan B.
Yes.
I think this morning on the conference we also heard AP people moving to marketing, etc., which is like. Maybe they were never on their place on AP or whatsoever, but definitely you need to have a plan B, which is good. End-to-end ownership. We talked about it before. You already admitted you hardly see it, or better, I never saw it. We did see some examples actually where people try to actually at least deliver services almost end to end. And then especially on the ownership part. And most of the GPOs, and I think last year I also discussed GPO role is taking over and where is the role of the head of the GBS when you have all GPOs in place. Also there we actually concluded that the ownership is still in a lot of cases far away. Do you have examples where you've seen that it's really an ownership, or that it is more a role of bringing people together, trying to govern, say, the process, or did you really see roles in companies where it's really ownership driving, say, the transformation?
Very few examples, but one example that I've seen that actually works well. It's usually a combination of part of the organization. Maybe they're even separate roles. So you have people who are process experts that are able to fuel the organization with maybe all the new technological advancements or ideas how to execute the process in a better way. But then you actually have like a GPO, but more in a business role. So it's part of their business function. They become a GPO as well. And that means they're actually quite high and quite senior in the organization, and they're good at stakeholder management. And that allows them to be more powerful in negotiating the changes, which, let's face it, like they're not always welcomed changes for a lot of the part of the organization. So I think the more experienced and the more influential person and closer to the business, I think that's what actually makes sense is able to have a bigger impact. And in this particular organization case, the GPO, it was like a GPO sponsorship role, but then they actually had their operational GPOs doing all the process expertise, but the whole stakeholder management was in the business, and that actually worked quite well, right?
Yeah, and so that's more a bit of a team, because otherwise you need also translators there. Because I do admit, I think the role of being the ambassador, being the people manager, to getting everybody on the same page is one skill, which is often not combined with really the topic expertise. Is it? Yeah.
Yes, and it's more like, where you have influence versus like who's actually coming up with all the ideas and recommendations and data and facts, and to actually take it forward. But then you have someone who's sponsoring it across the rest of the organization. And I think the sponsoring and stakeholder management part is very important.
Yeah, because although some GBSs are very evaluated, sometimes we still see when I started actually 16 years ago, I went into a shared service center and I said, "Oh wow, you managed it very well." And then the head of the shared service center, "No, it looks fancier than it is, because if the business says press F5, we press F5, and if they say press F1, we press F1." So 16 years ago, I thought it was actually something from yesteryear, but we still pop up into clients which are evaluated, outsourced part, the transactional part, etc., etc. But still, business has a very big say. Do you also see that? And in those cases, they even have a GPO. So in that case, also the question is do you have the same experience? Did you see this? And do you also advise those companies actually is to redefine what they are?
Yeah. We do see it. I think it's not unusual at all what you described. But I think I would also come back to the concept of COEs, because if you actually have more end-to-end ownership in the center and really center of excellence, and you have the skills there, I think you're going beyond just executing based on SLAs. And I think this is the key sort of characteristic of the COE. Of course, SLAs need to be there, but it's a little bit more than that, right? Because they're actually responsible for everything that doesn't happen to be in the SLA, right? And if the ownership and drive and responsibility is there, then you are more likely to get the trust from the business as well. So it's very rarely just the GPO itself, but what sort of organization does he have behind him, and has the organization actually built the trust to maybe influence the process a little bit more? And if you bring facts and data, so if you bring facts, for example, about and data again, the GBS sits on data, right? So if you actually bring some information about common suppliers that are not using the same payment terms, and that maybe are issuing 1,000 invoices because they're a global client, and maybe you can consolidate it in maybe not one invoice but a couple of invoices. This is straight efficiency for you and the business impact for your business. So if you start bringing them examples like that, they will see you as a trusted partner. They will understand that you know what you're talking about, and I think they will be more willing to give you the trust and authority to do a little bit more than press F1.
Yeah, good one. Because I think in the last sentence you touched one thing: authority. I just read a post of someone is saying, do you recall this, that you actually come up with the data, you come up with the proof, it's clip and clear, and everybody in the room is nodding, and there is no decision. Mm-hmm. And there the end is that's a lack of authority, and how do you change it? And I think also when I speak to our clients, that happens also a lot, that the GBS is sitting on data. They know actually what is happening. They might even be the better decision makers for the company than in the headquarters, but still lack the authority. How could you influence that authority part?
Yes, well, I think it's a very common challenge, but I see two ways how it's solved in a different organization. So one example of the organization was where we actually did a maturity assessment for them. And in this maturity assessment, it was actually one of our conclusion was that most of the process recommendations, they remained recommendations, but there is actually nothing for the business to actually have to listen to the recommendations, right? So it was, well, that's what was expected, but it never really happened. So the way we addressed it, very painful exercise, but we went through a very detailed RACI and a very detailed process exercise, defining for what type of queries, disputes, like what part of the organization is responsible for, and that helped to clarify the responsibility split, and then be able to influence and again use the data coming from those processes to head into the common direction. That's one approach. Another approach from the company that I mentioned that managed to reduce a lot of the invoices from global suppliers into single digit number of invoices was more, there was a culture of collaboration. And I think they didn't bother as much about the RACI, but they actually they just went and did it. And by showing that it actually proves the value, this is how they got the buy-in from the business. So I think it's very depends on the cultural fit of the organization. Some need to be very, very rigid and have it documented to the last step in the process. Others just do it. Yeah? And there's no right or wrong answer. Although I have to say my preference would be to build such a culture that people naturally do what is right without having to go into the very, very prescriptive rules.
Yeah, because old cultures are often still about, I want to have many people because then I'm a bigger king.
Yeah.
And so if reduce numbers, and the same is if you reduce suppliers, then I have less to care about. It's also one of the analyses we provide. We call it small invoicing suppliers. because often we look actually for the small gain into the main suppliers, reduce cost, etc., where the biggest gain is actually to look at your tail end. And nowadays it's easy to do with all the digital invoicing. You can pay earlier, etc. Because the reason they send the invoices is often because you pay so late. Yeah, the 90 plus payment terms. Thank you for sharing this on the end-to-end ownership. I still have also a few, as maybe also a short intermezzo, so a few short questions where you just can answer very short. In practice, leadership alignment becomes real when?
When you convince the unconvinced. I think this is the hardest. And again, when you look at GBS organization, you don't have one head stakeholder. Typically, you have multiple stakeholders. Not everyone sees it as a benefit for them. So identifying the potential distractors and making sure that at least they accept the change. I think this is where it starts, and then you continue building on it.
Try to change the culture, the ones who do. In practice, governance only gets attention once
things go wrong. While I believe it should be thought through at the very early stages of the project. Always when we design the operating models, governance is a key part of it. And if you get it right, it helps. It's like your insurance policy. It will help you eliminate a lot of the errors and troubles later on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in practice, transformation starts losing momentum when?
When things go hard or where it drags for too long. That's why it's important to do the pulse checks as well, and to fuel it with engagement and with and making sure that people are not overstrained as well for a long period of time. And that happens very, very often. Sometimes there are sole projects and there's a project after project that people find it unbearable. So I think you need to keep the right balance and maybe some internal rotation as well to make sure, or some support, or maybe bringing some additional resources to make sure that it's sustainable.
Yeah, and I always think about also a saying of Simon Sinek, who says is the hard work we put in things we don't believe in, it's called stress. And the hard work we put in the things we believe in, it's called passion. And I think in a lot of transformation projects, people don't believe in, and then it's very hard to get to a final result. Maybe also in that line, the strongest GBS teams consistently do what?
Reinvent themselves. I think you cannot stand still. In today's very rapidly, continuously changing environment, you need to stay ahead of the market all the time and be open.
Okay, good. And then for GBS leadership, what is required into a GBS leader today? What was not needed 10 years ago?
Very good question. I don't think there's a simple answer to that. There are at least a couple of things. First of all, because the world is changing so rapidly, I think a higher level of flexibility and agility is needed than it used to be. I think it's also about maybe a little different skills. So the whole concept of T-shaped skills, like having general awareness across multiple areas, and especially technology, with maybe some one deep domain knowledge. And then the last thing would be the stakeholder management. GBS leadership, it is really about reconciling the different needs of the people that you manage, but then at the end, your clients that you're actually serving. And I think that becomes more and more important, given the scope is a little bit more advanced, less clear, and I think it needs a little bit more negotiations and stakeholder management to make it successful.
Yeah, so the head of the GBS becomes a bit GPO for CEOs.
Yes, I think, and the trouble with that role sometimes it's with the whole concept of moving the GBS into more driven by GPOs and maybe a little bit more into the landlord model. Very often you have the GPOs, but many still do the double hatting for the rest of the center, and that that's where the stress actually comes, because then you have multiple roles, and of course it's easy for some of the balls to drop if you need to do all of that.
Funny, because also this role starts to be pushed more in the translation role than it was maybe before. With so much pressure around AI and efficiency, when you were a leader, what would you decide where not to rush in?
Not to make any too early decisions on headcount implications. And again, some of the examples that we mentioned were companies rushed with reducing the headcount, anticipating the changes. Of course, you need to have the targets to reduce headcount, and every GBS has a target each year to deliver some efficiencies, but don't go too far with it unless you have a proof of success. Otherwise, I think it's a recipe for a failure.
Okay, and that would also be your advice to a new appointed GBS leader, which starts tomorrow. You would tell him, don't stress too much on bringing down the numbers?
Maybe not don't stress too much, but don't make any rapid decisions before you actually see the results. Because I think some of the companies, they did anticipate the double-digit cuts, anticipating the changes, but not really having the proof of concept, right? So I think don't go too far with it. I think that's the advice, But don't ignore it, for sure not.
Very good, thanks. And then the last one. And then, first of all, thank you for the very nice conversation and your knowledge and your experience. But what signal tells you that the GBS organization is truly healthy?
I think it's what the clients tell about GBS. If there is a good collaboration, if they're in the GBS center to actually build the culture of collaboration and they trust each other, I think that's a perfect signal that they're doing well.
Thank you very much, Ola.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, Oscar.